Hello, friends. Welcome to the Fro Sessions, where we inspire you to live fiercely. I'm your host, Annick Magac, and today I have a return guest, Joanna Zarach. On our previous episode, which you'll be able to find in the show notes, we talked about Joanna's background, really where you were going with this is like, I don't even know how to really say it, but basically we talked about a lot of different things: the power focus, authenticity, your journey from being an immigrant to going to MIT to working in consulting. And now we're going to fast forward because I don't want to recap what we talked about in the previous episode. But today we're going to hit on the big topic of money. So, Joanna, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me back. I really enjoyed our last session, and I'm looking forward to exploring one of my most favorite topics in the whole wide world.
I know. I don't know too many people that get, well, this excited about money and also spreadsheets.
Yes, those go hand in hand in my world. So yes, I get equally excited about both.
And I really wanted to talk to you about money because I'm finding more and more that it's a topic that I'm going to just generalize and say that a lot of women don't want to talk about. Or when people talk about money in general, they're talking about that they just need to make more money or save more money. And I think money really goes beyond those two topics. So let's just backtrack a little bit and kind of talk about why you love money so much and like how you got onto being a specialist in this and talking about money, because you and I met through video and your big topic on video was money.
Yep. That it certainly was, and it was actually after quite a journey into finance, not as a profession, but as just really a personal exploration. And people's money stories. There's only so many different buckets, right? So as you can imagine, being an immigrant, there's a scarcity of money. There's just not enough. So growing up, there was just never enough money, right? The money was, it was seen as also something that someone else was in charge to give to you. And, it was more so even in Poland because it was a socialist country. There wasn't like an opportunity. It wasn't like you work harder, you'll get more money. It was like, here is the allocated, salary for everybody, and work less, work more. It's sort of the same. And there wasn't that idea of differentiating yourself and being valued higher. So that was kind of a little bit of the origin why I'm so interested in money. I saw money as something that would give me opportunity, but also would reward my effort. Right? I think that's an important point.
And how did you see that coming here? So you came as a teenager, and then you immediately became aware that the American culture was different, and especially as an immigrant coming here, that it's, in some ways, from my personal experience, I think that immigrants need to try harder, especially if they're not coming for money, to catch up. So what was your experience with that?
Yeah, so my family moved here like a fully formed family. It's a family of 5 with no assets whatsoever. We sort of, like the story goes, that my dad received 1 month salary equivalent from Poland to come to the U.S., and it was $18.
Wow.
So that was the difference in sort of how money was valued and the currency exchange. And we were very fortunate. And one of the reasons we immigrated is because my dad did have a position here, but it was like a university professor. It was not a lot of money for a family of 5 to establish everything, right? So, yes. I think one of the things that was in my favor is I got involved in family finances from day one, right? Like,
as a teenager?
I have always, yes.
Okay.
I always knew how much money my dad made, the whole budget, like people not learning financial literacy, and not having that foundation. I was kind of forced into co-managing and being aware of finances and knowing what everything costs for our family.
But why did that happen?
Well, because when you're an immigrant, everybody needs to help.
Right,
English
okay.
is a barrier. You need to you're figuring things out. Like, there's no luxury of you go have a childhood.
Right.
Right. There's you're old enough and you can help. You can read this, right? Here, you need to read this. I was the one, sort of the precocious child, the one who was like most curious and was learning English the fastest. And so I became the go-to to try to understand American rules, American laws. There's tax returns, there was like paychecks, there And I wasn't involved in necessarily in the transaction, but I was aware of it. I was
Okay.
aware of, again, how much things cost, what it was. And even like, my my first job, like the neighbor down the street that asked me if I wanted to babysit for $2 an hour. I was like, sure. I had no business babysitting, but I was a 13-year-old, and they were like, we're going to give you money to watch these kids. And by the way, they had a Nintendo. So I was like, score. I'm going to play.
Doesn't take much at that age.
I'm going to learn how to play Mario Brothers from a 3 and a 5-year-old. So that's awesome. And so, but like one of the money stories is I earned all this money and I spent none of it. Like I made my $2 an hour. And I think at the end of the year, I had like $9. They gave all that money to my parents because they needed it to move.
Wow.
Wow. So I think that like just first of all understanding that like doing what it takes with money, right? Like so whatever money you have, what is it? What's the priority? Right? What's the priority for that money? Learning that early on, and then and in high school I didn't have a job permit. We actually weren't allowed to work in the U.S.
Okay.
And so my dad had a work visa, but we were his dependents, and you're not allowed to have a job.
Right.
So I didn't have a work, paid work. I got my senior year in high school, and then my very first job was in the summer after I graduated high school. And again, it was like, this is so awesome. Like I can earn money, as a teenager. So for me, money always meant independence, right? And so the more money I had, the more independent I was. And I didn't really have the sense of, here is the things I need. It was really, what can I do? How free can I feel with the money that I have? And so that's a theme, actually. It started, again, very, very early on.
Yes, because that's very different than wanting to own that Nintendo that you're playing at the neighbor's house and wanting to acquire material goods.
Right. I wanted to be, I wanted to have the ability to sort of pay for things I wanted to pay for. But I didn't, like, there was never, I remember, I wasn't ever saving for a goal. Like I wasn't saving for a car, or I wasn't saving to spend. See, most people aren't really saving money. They're just waiting to spend it. And I think that's also a difference in psychology. I like the idea of just having money and not like, pent up demand. Pent up demand is what most people have. That's why they get in trouble in credit card debt, right? Credit card debt, huge part of credit card debt is that you're just like, well, I have access to these funds right now. So even though I could delay gratification, I'm going to do it right now.
Right.
It's what happens when people ask, what would you do if you won a lottery? It's a lot of pent up demand. The first thing people do is rattle off all the things that they wish they could own or buy that they've been, for some reason, haven't been able to do. And so for me, I didn't suffer from that. I don't know if it was like because I lived kind of a simple life / of deprivation growing up. So it wasn't like these luxuries were expected.
Right.
I didn't respond to peer pressure. Like I still don't. So I think that was an aspect of it where I wasn't looking around and be like, oh, how do I fit in? How do I get accepted? I was focused on achieving. And money was just another way to achieve.
So it brought you into this world of finance, really. Like I guess maybe the best way to say is that because it was a level of achievement for you, you were going through and pursuing either jobs or contracts or something like along those lines where you could actually make some good money.
So interesting thing, my entree into the world of personal finance is at age of about 21.
Okay.
Was I 21? Was I 20? I think it was 21. Yes. So at the age of 21, I finished college. I was actually working at a research job for 6 months before I started grad school. And I was renting rooms in people's houses. So that's like, that's the reverse house hacking where I was like, I just need a room. I don't need to rent an apartment. I'm just trying to find temporary housing that's the cheapest possible for this research job that I'm doing. And that's what I did. And one of them happened to be with a was a consultant, and she was a doctor, right? This was because it was a research, and so it was affiliated with the hospital. And so a very lovely couple, had fond memories, no connection whatsoever because there was no social media, there was no LinkedIn, there was no way to stay in touch.
Right.
And house because I would often not just live there, but I would dog sit for them. Like they had a dog, they would travel, I would be there to help. So I would just, look at their library and see what can I read. And one of the books that I read was Millionaire Next Door. So at the age of 21, the book has been out maybe a year or two at the time.
Yes.
That was a pivotal moment of my sort of financial education or financial life, was reading that book. And I highly recommend it to people who are sort of early on or haven't really established an understanding of it. And it's a classic. And since then, there's been...
David Bach?
It's the... can you hear me still?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yep.
But my headphones
you just switched.
cut out.
Yeah, you just switched off.
Yeah, my headphones cut out. Hold on.
Okay. I'm still getting some cut, which sucks.
All right. I have to get out. I'm going to hang up or pause. Or okay. I just need to get out and we need to start with the Billionaire because the headphone is connected. It says connected. No, is it connected to where? Ear detection's on, microphone's on. Hold on. It's not. These headphones are 2 years old, and I'm finding that.
Are they losing their juice?
Yeah, especially on. No, but see, one that says 98% on the right and 65 on the left, but they've been cutting out like that.
Okay. Do you want to just not use them and then see?
No, I can use them. It just it literally just disconnected. Now it's connected again.
Okay.
So. Okay. All right, we're gonna pick it up from Millionaire Next Door.
Okay.
All right, so the Millionaire Next Door was it's just a critical part of my financial education and financial life, and it really left an impression. And it's not David, but it's by Thomas Stanley.
Okay.
So Stanley went on to he was hired by some wealth management firms to do this research project, where he interviewed real life millionaires. These are people who accumulated. I call it an accumulated millionaire. I think when we talk about millionaires, people have different ideas,
right,
about what a millionaire is. And so that's the definition that I use, and actually most of the personal finance community uses, is a millionaire is somebody who's accumulated a net worth of $1 million or more.
Okay.
So this person may have never had a salary of $1 million. They may not have a business. They may not have, made a sale. They literally over time got past the $1 million mark in usually investable assets.
Okay.
It's typical to accredited investor. So he researched the people who and said, well, here's what people think who wealthy or rich a person is, and here's who actually holds assets. So this idea of asset ownership was introduced to me as the goal, not as showing your wealth, but keeping your wealth. So there was some characteristics around these people. They typically were business owners, lived in a sort of a modest household, married, some kids, of old cars, right? So there was these different things that he noticed about people who fit into that criteria. What can it cut out again?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know why the headphones won't. I don't know if it's a Bluetooth or. So yeah, I might not use them. I don't know if the volume, if the.
Let's try not using them, because I wonder also if that's affecting the cutting in and out of the video, which it may not.
I wonder if the Bluetooth. Yeah. So okay, so the sound will change, but that's fine.
Okay, that's all right.
Not too echoey.
Yeah.
Okay, what was I? Okay. So the Millionaire Next Door really gave me a blueprint and a set of behaviors to follow to achieve this. And it was really just it just imprinted on me in terms of what I thought about money and finances and how to live. And, I went on and kept doing what I was already set on the path.
but what it really affected is how I felt about things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
So
how we
explain a little bit
feel,
more about that. Yeah, what does that mean?
yeah. So when you drive an old car,
Mm-hmm.
people look at you like you're poor.
Right.
And,
Mm.
there's a lot of judgment associated with how you live
Right.
that can affect your self-worth and well-being. When you have a set of beliefs that you know why you're doing it, or
Mm-hmm.
you feel like, no, 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 actually, the wealthy people, so the average wealthy person, that's how they act. You kind of create a shield, right?
Okay.
You have a bit of a sort of invincibility cloak that said, yeah, I hear you, but you don't know what I know.
Right.
So
So you're talking about when you're not showing the wealth, like that in a
yes,
position where you
yeah,
could be worth 10 million, but you look like a pauper.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. And that's actually even more true during the accumulation phase.
Okay.
So unless you're born into it, unless you have a really strong entrepreneurial streak and you get on wealth sort of in an instant,
Mm-hmm.
if you're sort of accumulating over a lifetime, there's so many opportunities to derail your progress
Yes.
every turn.
Yes.
And money is a series of habits, like everything else. And so it's easy to develop habits and a set of beliefs around money that really you're always spinning your wheels. And people get comfortable in their set of beliefs and their set of habits, and they accept them. They accept the situation. They said, there's nothing I can do to change this.
So that's a really interesting observation about this, and I like the way that you're talking about it. One thing that I have been really cognizant of lately is that idea, but in a different, maybe the way that it's been shown to me is that as we get older and you start to see really a big divide on how people live. Like in your 20s,
Mhm.
everybody's kind of doing whatever, you're just trying to
Yeah.
start a career and all that. But especially
Right.
as you age and people start to gain assets or get
Mhm.
into relationships, there's
Mhm.
more at stake. And also it's very interesting to see where people go with their money or what they do with their money.
Right. Right.
So this idea that you're talking about, that having a set value or understanding what your values are, what do you encourage people to do to gain, to like figure out what that is? Because I think a lot of times people don't even know what they value.
Yeah, I think it's two things. Like I think values is definitely one aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I would even say the more important is the deciding around the set of habits.
Okay.
Uh, and habits are also default positions. So if you have your set of default positions, will dictate how well you'll do in life. And I'll say that one default position I have is paying attention to your money. Like know your money, right?
Right.
I've met so many people that have no idea where their money goes. Like they
Yes.
basically spend their salary. Like their budget is whatever their income is, it's their budget, and then
Right.
some.
Right.
And so this fear of money, fear of finance, right? If your default position is money's scary, money's dirty, money's for other people, rich people are bad,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
your default position is, then you're not going to put in the effort to do that. So that's one habit is just to knowing your money. Another belief is like you can make more money. There's so many people I run across. They're like, well, this is my salary,
Right.
and that's the limit.
Yeah. So it's okay. So lately, do you ever? I know you follow Ramit Sethi.
I
Okay.
love Ramit.
Okay. So I caught something that really like caught my ear just last week, and I was like, that's a
Mhm.
great way of saying it. He said there's two things that most finance people will, actually, there's only one thing that most finance people will teach you, which is how to save more money. Like the habits around, like, how do you cut
Yeah,
down on spending?
right.
He's like, but nobody's ever talking about, like, you just need to make
Make
more
more.
money.
Right.
He's like, no
Right.
one can teach you that. And I was sitting there and I was like thinking, I'm like, I got to ask Joanna if she thinks that that's also true. Do you think that you
Yeah.
can't teach that?
Well, I don't know. It says you can't teach it because he sells a couple courses on that.
Yeah, I know. That actually is true, right? That is true.
Ingenuous of Ramit to say you can't teach it. I think that what he's pointing it's a belief,
Right.
right? It's not a skill set; it's a belief. And he teaches skill sets around negotiating, starting a business around your passion,
Mm-hmm.
converting the business you already have into something more profitable. But I think that like when it comes to skill, right, saving money is very concrete. And I would add to that you have to do both. So here's the thing. What I said is most people's budget's their income.
Right.
A lot of people, as they earn more money, just spend more money.
Yes.
So
yeah.
if you don't have any discipline to put a buffer and increase that buffer as you earn more, to separate, you have to separate your income from your expenses. You have to decide for yourself, what lifestyle do I want to live? Understand how expensive is that lifestyle. Then ask yourself, am I willing to do what it takes to get that income, to satisfy my desire to live this lifestyle?
Right.
And first of all, people never ask the first question. They don't go, well, what life do I want to live? How expensive is it?
Right. Because
they're never willing to do what it takes.
No, well, nobody ever really wants to look at the price of things. Truly the price of things. Like if I drive this nicer car, how much actually is the insurance? Well,
or how many hours, how uncomfortable am I willing to get to pursue a career that's higher value, higher paying in our current social system?
Right.
Because computer programmers, by the way, used to be Black women that used to be underpaid, right?
Right. Yes.
You were like, that's tedious job. That's a tedious job. Or women in general, by the way, the cadre of computer programmers, that was not a valued skill set. And in the last 30 to 50 years, all of a sudden they're like, oh, no, this is a valued skill set, right?
Totally changing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, do you understand the valued skill set? Are you willing to do what's uncomfortable to get there? But it's a sequence. You've got to look all of them, because you're still going to need to create a distance between your income and your expenses. You're going to have to take that space in the middle and do something with it.
And that's a huge topic, right? So, okay, I guess let's go back a little bit with the idea that most people accept that they just make a certain amount of money.
Right.
And also there's the mentality around that where the only way that it's worth for me to make a lot of money is if I work really hard. And then they get sometimes caught up in taking on several jobs that maybe don't pay so well because that's the way they think that they need to be able to make more money.
Sure. And it is a perfectly valid strategy, by the way.
Yes.
That's the beauty, by the way, of America is the harder you work, your effort is linked to additional income. Now, the level of additional income, that's inequitable. I'll be the first one to say, not every hour that you put in is worth what another person's hour gets put in, right? It's not like, well, I work 80 hours and you work 40 hours, so I earn twice as much.
Correct.
That's socialism. No.
Yeah.
That's not, that's not, you have to have a valued skill, right? And so, yes, you can always put in more hours. And I think it's a great way to start. I was an hourly worker when I started making money. It was a thing of beauty because I was like, I can just work one more hour and I can make $7.25 more because that was my starting wage in college.
Right.
And what I did, I worked every extra hour I could with a full workload. I did not go party on Saturdays and Sundays.
Right.
I had a full slate of hours. So I think that's an important thing to get at and then to realize there's a limit to it.
Right. There's only so many hours in a week.
So many hours. Yes.
And then also, I think I want to kind of get into, and I hope I'm not getting off topic by also bringing this up, but that lately what has also, besides Ramit's interesting notation about just make more money, is because sometimes, there'll be the argument that women don't get paid as much, and I don't necessarily want to go into that right now. But there's also the idea that if you are deciding on how you want to live and whether or not you are living this extremely, well, even if I use the word luxury, because I love to say that I live a luxurious life, but it means a very different thing to me than most people. Right. Now, there's also the idea that maybe you don't actually need to make as much money as you think you need to make. But if you are good with your money, or I should say, and if you are good with your money, that is completely viable as a lifestyle. Not that many people talk about that. It's starting to become much more of a conversation, but it's definitely not something that people, I think, relate to as being something mainstream as a thought pattern.
Yeah. I mean, I think this, even again, the self-examination of what's a good life, right? What's and Ramit's word, what's how to live a rich life.
Right.
It really is an examination saying, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish with
Right.
my money?
Right.
Like by spending money, you say, well, I love luxurious things. Okay, what does that mean to you, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to say, well, how much does it truly cost? The luxuries that you truly want, right?
Right.
There's examples all the time around like, people are like, well, rent's expensive or this car payment's expensive. But did you examine, like, did you really need that? Like, what is it you're trying to buy? You're trying to buy solitude because you don't want to have roommates. Do you want to have a great kitchen because you're going to be throwing parties instead of going out, right? Like, there's just so little conscious thought put into it. It's almost like, well, everybody else is doing it, so I should too. So really examining that and saying, like, how do I attain those quote unquote luxuries at a lower cost? Which, by the way, is another strategy that everyone should use. The default that I have is, I want that. How do I get that at like a good price? Right. Like, and can I wait for that? Right. Like, is this a deal? Do I really need that? Right. The impulse control around buying, the understanding why you're shopping. Right. A lot of people are like, oh, I have a shopping addiction, or I'm shopping to fulfill something. It's like, yeah, because you have nowhere else that money has no other job. So you're just letting it go, makes you feel good. You're like, make you feel better? Conversation with a friend, work on your social skills.
Right. Maybe some real connection.
Yeah. So you're not filling up with, with the stuff, because that's easier, or that's on your Instagram feed, or you feel this feeling of self and comparison to others. I mean, that's really, we have a system that's designated to separate you from your money, by the way.
The capitalist system?
Not the capitalist. It's not just it's the post-industrial, the age of advertising.
Okay.
What's entirely to separate you from your money. And
social media is definitely helping with that enormously.
Oh, it's like the best tool ever. Yeah. And so knowing that, by the way, knowing like, oh, that's just a signal. Again, knowing your priorities, knowing your values, and then having a default. Like, if you see something you want, is your impulse to click on it and buy it?
Right.
That's going to be hard. Like, you have to literally break that habit. Are you comfortable carrying a credit balance and paying interest, like reviewing how much interest you paid, like suffering the pain?
Yeah.
That's important. But if your default position is like, oh, I'll just pay the minimum payment, that's a habit you need to break. You need to get to the point where you feel nauseous because you pay interest.
Right.
So,
and really, that's also dealing with true emotions in your life that most people, we associate that if we're going to zone out by drinking too much or eating too much, that those are all emotional. We're trying to cover something emotional, but
we are. I mean, we have physical, mental, emotional, intellectual needs, and then we are trying to press the easy button.
Yes.
And the reason we think it's easy is because someone sold us the idea.
Right. And this actually takes more and more work, as I'm realizing. But and this goes back to the first episode, because at the very tail end, we touched on the fact that you had made a comment around, just to paraphrase, that basically you want to work less now than ever. So if we go back to early in your career when you were saying that you could work that extra hour at 7:25 and that you knew that you could make more, what is putting you because let's just say you're in midlife right now. What is putting you in a position where you can do that and it makes sense for you?
So all the things that I talked about, just developing a set of habits that were, my default positions. But there was also just, a series of decisions / luck, right? There's always this sort of luck opportunity, walk through the door. So I didn't really have much career guidance, or I wasn't really sure what I needed to do, but my ability to live with little, right? So this, like, again, in college, in high school, just my entire life, I had this like sense of, well, how little can I make do? I have a very much a make do attitude.
Yeah.
That is good in some sense, not so good in others, right?
Yes.
So I can make do with very little. That has served me as I was going through grad school, So the other thing, the other habit or belief or whatever you call it that I got from Millionaire Next Door is to invest your money.
Okay. This is a big
Invest
thing. Yes.
and taxation.
Okay.
So I got that message at 21.
Okay.
And because I filled out my own tax returns, I noticed like I became conscious of our tax system and this whole investing thing, which is completely foreign. And and I think this was from my ex-husband's father. The advice that he gave him was, you should open an IRA. That was it. That was the message. Open an IRA. I was like, what is this IRA and how do we open it? So one of the habits and non-negotiables that became part of my life is invest first.
Beyond even deciding to take your pay home, but the first step would be to take a portion and invest it.
Invest first.
Okay.
That is number one. Like line items, people list their expenses, rent, car, food, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Investment.
Okay. So my understanding about that is that if you invest first, like that money is just taken out of your account. So you have everybody's got some form of direct deposit. It's not that hard.
I think we didn't. I mean, I saved up
probably.
and
Yeah.
wrote
You're right
the
about
check,
that.
back in the day.
Yeah, you're right.
You can do the, I mean, this is Ramit's as well.
Yeah.
Advice is automating things, making the money unseen, especially, I put the am I back?
Now you're back. Yep. Okay.
All right. So one of the things that Ramit and other people recommend is automating your finances, because the money that's unseen you'll never be tempted to spend.
Correct.
So yes, from a more sort of tactical way is automating it, but that comes after the belief that is a priority.
Oof, that's a big one. What do you think?
You don't save what's left over.
Right. Well,
you don't save what's left over.
What do you think?
You spend what's left over.
You do spend what's left over. But okay, so what do you think is the mental block there for people? Because that's all of it right there.
I think that there is, I don't know because I've never experienced it, but I've also never paid penny on interest on credit cards because that was like unfathomable.
Right.
And one of the things is because I saw how hard I had to work to make that $725, right? Like money was not given to me. And then I saw how expensive things were because my parents weren't paying for things.
Right.
So being very conscious about the cost of living and having to pay for it and seeing how that translated into my effort. And I was like, well, how do I keep more of it?
Right.
So I was more interested in keeping my money than having it as just a source of spending. And I think the mental blocks is one, people don't do the math.
Yeah,
like the math should convince you. I mean, and again, it's coming from someone who's a numbers person. So I know that's not for everybody. So I'm not addressing directly your question because I'm like, why don't people do it? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that
people to take this logical path. The other thing is that we lack compassion for our future selves.
Ooh. Okay, tell me more.
It is the connection to an older version of yourself that says, what can I do for that person? That's kind of abstract, but the less abstract you can make that and say, where do I want to be in a decade? What do I wish I would do? And again, you'll find the theme of self-reflection, of stopping, of thinking, and saying, what can I do? So you within the now, like if you do a tax deferred account, your government will give you some money for that. And you're like, hey, that's more money for me
right.
I didn't have to work for. And so that's a benefit. Like, again, do the math, feel good about it, and, get the maximum reward. But down the line, just say, well, where do I want to be? And what can I do today to put myself in a better position to be there? Because there's no guarantees, right?
Right.
But what can I do today? What's the effort? What's the trade-off? And again, what's my system? I'm a big believer in creating a system. So why don't people do it? I don't think that the importance of it is being emphasized enough.
Right.
And by the time you start earning, you have less influence in your life. When you start making money, you don't have parents. You're usually not in college. there is no voices that are telling you, hey, how does your IRA balance look like?
Yes.
We don't talk enough about money,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't celebrate financial wins. What we do celebrate, as you well know, and I've talked about it, is what's likable, what's Instagrammable.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
Vacations, renovations, new toys. Look at the ease of life. Look at all the things I have.
Yeah.
Love, love, love. Aspirational class.
Yes. Aspirational being the key word there.
Aspirational.
So in this, because like, you know, I think with all this that I want to have this conversation so badly, and this is why I have you here. It's because we're all, I mean, the majority is thinking about it in the aspirational. And then the idea is if I work harder, make more money, whatever. Now, if you sit down and you figure out what your values are and you see yourself in the 10 years of saying, okay, when I reach 50, when I reach 60, how do I want to live?
Right.
Then you actually you're empowered to say or to think, there's an alternative way for me to do this. It may not mean me working harder for the next 10 years because that's the default. Like I, you know, even for me, I'm like, I'll just work harder, you know, instead of like, how can I make more money or what can I currently do with my savings that'll do passive income to make it happen. So can you talk a little bit to that? Because I think the passive income has kind of put you into this position now.
The thing is, though, that you cannot skip the hard work step.
Right. Okay.
It's not. It's the biggest determinant of how fast you can accumulate enough wealth to create any type of passive income is your contribution rate. And contribution rate is basically how much money can you set aside at the earliest part.
Right.
And that is, so I don't want to undervalue the hard work step.
So, well, and also with this hard work thing, even if you are working hard and you don't put any of that money away, you're just always going to work hard.
Right. So that is so working, what happens is in our culture of hard work is sort of the work hard, play hard mentality.
Yes.
It says the harder I work, the more I deserve.
Yes.
And the deserve happens today, right?
Yes.
The more I deserve to have today.
Yes.
And there are entire professions that are, by the way, tied up in this.
I also want to add on to that one of the biggest problems I have with this whole like self-care, you know, that wellness and health experts love to say is like, really, you just need to do self-care. Well, everything that you're citing actually is just costing me money. And I don't necessarily think that that's actually great self-care. Like we need to stop, you know, like that is not what the definition of self-care should be.
Well, I think the self-care industry is trying to sell the easy button once again.
Correct.
Everyone says, if you just hand over your hard-earned money, I will take care of it for you. That's not self-care, by the way. That's care you're purchasing from someone else.
Yes.
Self has to have self in it.
Right.
So your willingness to, and again, I'm a purveyor, like I'm a purchaser of, you know, of care products. They're not self-care, right? But it's like, sure, but how much self-care do you have to purchase to make up for that, like overwork or overburdening yourself or the overwhelm?
Right.
And it's okay to purchase some that's so equitable or equivalent, but you have to decide, like, what is the self-care I need or want, and how can I get it for a better deal? Like, how can I get it? How can I be a value buyer? Right. And so make a list, again, put a dollar amount to it, and say, yeah, these are the things that actually enable me to function. And maybe some, you know, a lot of people need that just to function.
Right.
And that's fine. And you have to address other things. You say, well, are you, you know, what are the other difficult things you have to do in life? Because what care do you need to purchase because you're not doing it yourself?
Right.
And a lot of us have to, again, if you have bad habits around eating, if you have bad habits around you know, movement, not just exercise, but moving around, right?
Yes.
Like, so back. And if you have bad habits around social connection, and I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
bad habits in those areas, you're always going to try to compensate, right? You're going to have paid friends. By the way, how many of us pay people? A part of what we're purchasing is a connection.
That is true.
Right?
Yes. Can you give a couple examples? I think it's good to give people examples on that.
Yeah, like your hairdresser is a paid friend.
For sure.
Your could be your massage therapist, because your personal trainers, very good example. In some ways, coaches are paid friends. They are people who will receive you, but you have nothing. You don't have to give them anything except turn over money. So it's easy. It's the easier way, because you don't have to suffer through any discomfort. You literally just have to pay them. So you don't have to deal with their bullshit. You get to pay for them to go away when you're done filling your needs.
Right.
Am I right? I'm right.
Joanna, you're right.
So ask yourself, and again, be really honest. Like, you say, you know what, I will work. I purchase care. I purchase cleaning services every week, even though I could keep that money. I didn't when I was at the beginning of my journey. It was a luxury. I saw it as a luxury. I wasn't making enough to justify it. Didn't even occur to me. It was too big of a spend relative to what I was making.
Right. So let's touch on this, because there is a point where you might have to give up certain luxury. Well, we'll just use the term again, luxuries, to have a financial accomplishment. Okay. Then if you know your values and you know actually how much money you have, you can switch where those values are and what you're doing with your money. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you have often talked about money. It's not that it's a currency, but it goes in and out. And sometimes money is made to be spent.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Even if you are also this idea that we need to save so that we can make investments.
Yeah. So this gets into complexity of our economic system a little bit.
Okay. Is it too big of a topic for?
Well, no, I think I'll just touch on it, because it's all in context, right? Okay. Because if you were to go back 100 years ago, the relationship with money is vastly different. And by the way, there was no retirement. People just died. So this notion of, but at the same time, about 100 years ago, we were in the Gilded Era of wealth. This is the first time in America. Wealth has always been there in Europe, but with much more force and wealth inequality. But in America in the 20s, there was a new class of wealth being created, the Gilded Era. And at that time, people were looking ahead and they were saying, my God, at this rate, in 100 years, we're not going to have to hardly work. We're going to have 15-hour work weeks. Because productivity is going, so the machines are wonderful. Yes. Innovation, technology. So just in that context, that didn't happen, by the way. Or it's not happening. Right. It's not happening yet. Our economy would allow for that to happen. If you reduced your consumption, you could reduce your work hours, right? So now we're back to, okay, how do I do that? And you say, well, if you don't want to reduce your consumption, you have to accumulate assets to compensate for your lowered time. Just because we live in an economic system, there's no denying it. Right. We live in a system where we say, if I want access to the following things, it costs X. Now, you can lower some of those costs by your choice of profession or vocation. But in general, we're like, at this lifestyle, as I said, figure out what lifestyle you want to have. I can tell you how much it's going to cost. Like, it's not that hard. Yeah.
You're better at numbers. You're looking at this all the time. You're right, and it probably isn't hard, but we're ignorant. Ourselves are ignorant to what we're spending and what things cost because we don't want to know.
We don't want to know. So find out so if you want a certain lifestyle and you want to maintain it past your working years, this is important.
That is
past
important.
Working years, you will need to have accumulated assets that will compensate for your lack of work. Because, by the way, our number one assets in our lifetimes is ourselves, our labor. what we generate, we are all assets. And the income that we're producing, you can sort of put a value on each person through the market lens. I love to do that because I'm weird.
I love how excited you get about it. This is great.
Because it's something I discovered when I was doing this personal finance stuff. I was like, what is a person worth? What is like $100,000 income translate to? How much money do I need in the market to receive that? I think it's about 2.5 million, by the way.
To receive, for off of interest? To
generate
interest of 100,000.
Generate that capital gain accumulation.
Okay, so that's actually awesome to hear that, because you won't oh boy.
There's a target, right? But
because that is a legit target I hear people talk about a lot, and I didn't know what that was, so that's great to hear. Yeah, that changes things very drastically for people when you hear that 2.5 million.
Yeah, you're trying to replace, and I'm not in front of the spreadsheet, so don't quote me on the numbers. But I have done the math, and I'm like, here's the value of your assets, and here's how much income you're trying to generate. And it's not something that people think about. But what happens is this, like, why we have a retirement crisis, because nobody sits down and thinks about it. They're like, oh, I want to have the consumption exactly the same. By the way, traditional retirement planning, that's exactly how it operates. It says, here's your income. It's an income-based planning, not expense-based planning, income-based planning. So the best thing you can do is separate your income from your expenses and say, well, what kind of lifestyle do I want to have? What do I need to get that? Now, if you wait till retirement age, we do have the Social Security system that'll kick in a little bit of money. A little bit.
Yeah.
It's enough, by the way. It's enough. It's enough to get by, because that is what it was made for. Social Security is not a retirement plan. It is called security and social for a reason. It is a way for us as a nation to say we are wealthy enough that old people shouldn't suffer. That's all it does. It is supposed to ease you. So it's supposed to put food in your mouth, some medicine, a little bit of housing, not a lot.
No, not much.
Not what you used to.
Right.
It's a room, maybe a roommate, but it's a roof over your head. It's food in your belly, and it's some sort of healthcare. So, and so retirement, like this whole retirement planning, or like passive income. So, but sort of go back and let's say in the last decade, when we've sort of we haven't started talking about it. There's been this movement of people who are looking down the line, and they are asking themselves, why am I working so hard?
Right. The fire community.
Yes. Or just in general, people go, well, we talked about hard work. Is this the only way? It always starts there. Like I cannot emphasize enough. It looks different for different people.
Okay.
But you cannot get around asset creation.
Okay.
Without hard work.
Well, let's take it back just to a basic. When you use the term asset, what does that mean to you?
There's just 3 types of assets.
Okay, go for it.
Market holdings.
Okay.
Which is just participating in our broader economy. Real estate holdings.
Okay.
So rental property, not the house you live in. That is not an asset. The house you live in is not an asset. Rental real estate. Or real estate that generates income for you.
Yes.
And business ownership. There are only 3 asset classes to create wealth in.
And most people,
and
I think if you ask the majority of people, that's not what they would list as assets.
No. Okay. People start splitting and by the way, we're an asset. I'm an asset. But when you're trying to get out of the work, you still have to build. You have to put in work to build any of those 3 assets. Require hard work. They do. Different types of work, but it's all hard work.
Right. You cannot get around that. And I think again, everybody wants the easy way out, but if you go back to your values, if that's that important to you, then you need to figure out how to reach that asset or get that asset.
The only easy things are if someone gives you the money and you have the discipline not to spend it. Or there is the other easy one, is just be a bum. Or lower your expenses. You know, how far can you lower your expenses? There are people who, there is like early retirement extreme.
Yes.
Guy who's like, hey, you could live on $7,000 a year.
Right.
You know what? I know plenty of people that live on 10, 20 a year. And you go, well, how is that? No one believes that, because they're like, that's not, first of all, it's very possible.
It is. It is.
It's, you know, whatever level of income you are, you're incredulous that someone lives on half, right?
Right. And also, like, the more money you make, I've always said this, like, your lifestyle doesn't really change depending on how much, just it's like kind of like the small details that kind of change, but like your habits don't really change. You know, what you perceive as like beautiful or important to you doesn't really change. So it
can. That's the thing. It can. And I think that there was a real disadvantage for people who come from middle-class households.
In what way?
Because they're used to it. Habits die hard.
Yeah.
And expecting something or feeling entitled to something.
Right.
It's a, you know, unless you yourself secured a middle-class income, usually a dual middle-class income, because our prior generations did not deal with the same level of expenditures that we are dealing with.
Oh, right.
When it comes to healthcare, education, and childcare. It is like, you know, it's hard because you feel like you're behind, but you're used to it already. You're used to it. You're used to a certain set of luxuries, and you feel entitled to them. So you're like, I'm just going to live the way I'm used to, as in I grew up in.
Right.
That, or you're overcompensating for poverty, or, you know, whatever. There's all kinds of psychology in play.
Yes. So if you go back to, I want to circle back to what you're doing right now. Yeah.
So, you know, I had, I think time was on my side when it came to investing. The other big shift was when I decided to leave science to pursue a career that was far more valued by society.
Which means more money.
Yeah, make more money, right? Significantly more money. The trajectory for me as a scientist, I wouldn't have hit that mark, the earning mark, probably for another decade or two.
Wow.
That I did in the transition.
That's amazing.
Right? And
that was a choice to do that.
It was not just a choice, it was effort. Right? I think we talked about it last time.
Yes.
It's effort. It's hard work.
Yes.
It's being uncomfortable and feeling out of place and feeling out of your element and constantly questioning and exiting one thing to start another. No support, right? And so time. Another one, which everybody will talk about, is partner choice. If you're going to choose to be partnered in life, number one financial decision in your life. It really is.
And
it really is.
Most divorces are based on that, and yet nobody really still wants to talk about that, even in relationships.
Just divorces, just like, don't just like. I think financial wherewithal, financial values, and financial potential needs to be considered. If you're not considering that, if you're not having those conversations, if you're not partnering with someone, if you're not evaluating them, if you're not, you know, I don't judge a lot, but when it comes to ambition and pursuit, and like, I'm like, when it comes to my, you know, where I put my fate, like, I'll judge. Like, I demand, you know, like, people don't demand enough of themselves or their partners, or just in general of the world, you know, make some demands. So I think that matters. That does matter. And so, you know, I've been fortunate and, but also very clear about it, like, you know, with that. So that's, in some ways, yes, a journey with a partner is financially easier if you're on the same page.
Right.
You know, if you share enough values, because, you know, if you're like kind of happy with, if you're a make-do person, you're like, okay, we just rent one place for the two of us, right? You cut some expenses, you can cut in half. There's that safety net of each other.
Yes.
And there's the support that you provide. And by the way, you feel a lot of that emotional, you know, purchasing, because you have each other. Right.
It's about that connection, going back to connection.
Yes. And so I think in some ways the journey is easier with the right, you know, with shared values and support and some goals in mind. And it's just, you can kind of trade the roles and stuff. So I think that's been I don't want to minimize it. I think that's been an important part of my journey. And then life transitions. I think life transitions are important moments to consider. If you haven't quite examined some of your values, life transitions are very important to consider what it is that you want your life to be. And I think for me, becoming a parent was probably the biggest transition.
Mm-hmm.
And that forced me to really think about my time. And I was like, I was already like becoming a parent later in life gave me a better financial foothold to have made the decisions that I have. Mm-hmm. It comes with a whole bunch of downsides. Again, you're like, oh, how old am I going to be when the kids are ready to leave? So, yeah. You start in a different phase of life, your financial life. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing. Like, if that's something that you want out of the future, you better get that stuff in order now, because even having a partner that's relying on you, but having kids, that's unpredictable. That's a whole lot of unpredictability. Mm-hmm. And you don't know how this asset yourself can go out in the working world. You don't know. Right. We have ideas. Our ideas of ourselves are static. This is a problem. We are not static, and our lives aren't static. We always think, I can always get a job, or I can always make more. Right. So we're living right at that edge, right? Yeah. That's not true. So transitioning to parenthood made me aware of my time, mm-hmm. how intensive children are, how I want to use my time, the trade-offs I'm making. There was more trade-offs to be made. And so, I wanted to change what I was doing with my time, mm-hmm. I think work-wise, because my work required me to fly a lot, to leave home on a weekly basis.
Yes, which is hard with 2 young children.
It is. It's easier when they're little, and then it becomes harder, for me at least, the type of parent I wanted to become. So parenting, the type of parent that I wanted to be, mm-hmm. It was not compatible with a high-powered career. Okay. That's just how it is, Yeah. And said, well, what are the other levers that I can pull? One was not moving to a bigger house. So not following the path of, when I got married for a second time, I sold my other house. I moved in with, this is my husband's condo that he bought for himself, for a person of one.
Which now has a family of 4.
Yeah. So, this is not the look at our luxurious life living in a large house. Mm-hmm. Now, again, you can have that large house, but can you have it downtown Chicago? You're making a bunch of trips. I said, I like living in the city. I don't want to plow any more money into a non-revenue generating real estate. This is not an asset, it's a liability. Mm-hmm. So making the conscious trade-off, saying, can we make do? Can we be fine here? And we are for now, right? Kids are mm-hmm. 7. Mm-hmm. So, but that's a big one. We didn't deplete our investments to make ourselves more comfortable. Sorry, it was another call. Yeah. To make ourselves more comfortable and to also satisfy the demands of others. Right. It's important.
Yes. Yes.
Where are those demands coming from? Parents, colleagues, neighbors, everybody. Mm-hmm. They're like, when are you going to get a house?
Everybody's got an opinion.
Everyone's got an expectation, not just an opinion. Yeah. There's expectations. And then they start to make you feel bad. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, am I going to feel bad? But again, you have to have a strong conviction around what it is that you're after. And so I didn't want to work to pay the mortgage, mm-hmm. or to pay real estate taxes, right? Or pay landscaping, or to pay the pool person, whatever it would be, right? Right. I didn't want to work just to do that, because I valued my time. Mm-hmm. And, I started looking and examining the finances that we had, and reflecting on it and saying, well, what is it? I really started to discover it. So I actually didn't pursue financial independence. No? I stumbled upon it. Wow. Woke up one day and I realized I'm there. And then I connected with the community.
But that's also because you knew, I want to make a point, is like, where your finances are. Like, you know,
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? And that also, what I'm recognizing is like a lot of people don't know where any of their money is. Or they think they do, but not really in a way. But you actually had such a good hold on it that you made the recognition that I can do this.
Yeah, like I just added everything up, like
Mm-hmm.
market was up, like, and again, I wasn't always that in tune with it. There were
Mm-hmm.
periods of time where I was just completely checked out.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a set of habits and a set of systems
Yes.
that worked. And so even though I wasn't paying attention to it, I kept doing the things
Mm-hmm.
that I needed to do. And again, the default position is, do we really need to buy this right now?
Right.
That's both me and my husband. Do we need this? Like, can this work for another month?
Right.
We have notorious for letting our appliances fall apart.
Yeah,
Some people
yeah.
judge. They're like, "Oh, that fridge is so ugly. That's so old. How can you live with that?" It's like, it works. Eventually, it breaks down, and that's when we purchase a nice appliance. So we're not gonna necessarily buy the cheapest thing that's like not nice,
Mm-hmm.
but we're gonna wait. We're not upgrading our lifestyle. We are both very good at just being like, it's okay. Now we live luxuriously in other ways. We take family vacations.
Yeah, you are great at taking vacations.
Yeah, but again, we do them on quote unquote budget.
Right.
We do value travel, right? We go, okay, sometimes we get hotels with hotel points. I'm gonna get a rental
Camping.
car. I'm gonna get a cheaper rental car. I'm not gonna get the SUV. I'm gonna get, I'm gonna go through Costco.
Yeah, yeah.
Like once I decide what to do, I'm like, well, how can I get that at a better price? This trip I'm planning, perfect example. I'm like, I do not know if I'm gonna regret flying this, bargain airline across the Atlantic. Hundreds of people can be wrong.
We'll find out soon.
we'll find out, like, how uncomfortable is that going to be for 8 hours of my flight? And but like, it's an experience like any. You can be like, okay, well, now I know, right? It's like, we're gonna see. But am I gonna save half? Like, I'm paying less than half for this bargain flight.
That's amazing. And
and
I'd also like to point out that even sometimes in the FIRE communities, or I don't even know what FIRE stands for.
Financial independence, retire early.
Okay. Sometimes in those communities, people wear a badge of honor of like how cheap they're actually living, which to me is sometimes a little too much. Like when I hear it, I mean, I know they're so proud of it and like, that's awesome. But
it's a subset of FIRE. Frugality, people who are frugal are a subset. And it becomes a little bit of a competition.
Right. Like how cheap.
How low can you go?
Yeah, totally. But even in the way that I'm pointing this out with you is that you maintain a nice balance. Like if that's too uncomfortable for your family, you'll make a different decision next time. You're not taking pride in how low can you go.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy a bargain like everybody
does.
But one thing that I have at this point in time or in life is I have the luxury of time. So I don't have to plug up the holes with more money. I also have both naturally and developed skills of project planning. So
yes,
I like to look ahead and say, I like to mitigate my risks or my spending. And, if I plan on doing something like, and even though I can afford it, I still like to save $5 on my $100 ticket. Like, is there a coupon? Is there a deal? Is there buy one, get one? Can I just get a deal on whatever I like? Yes, we'll go to Legoland, but can I just even get $5 off? Right? And it's like, people are like, oh, but I'm like, yeah, but it's the principle of things. But it's a habit, right? Can I get this just a little bit cheaper? And, and I don't clip coupons in this, I don't go to the grocery store and clip coupons, but I do go on my Target app and see if they price match it, like things like that. Like I've made trade-off between, well, how much effort. I don't have any, like, I'm not like, oh, I'm too good for that already. Yeah, I have so much money, I like to check. I mean, I buy things that are like, they're not, I don't shop at Aldi. I have tried, but I don't have everything I want. So it's just an extra stop. But for the things, once I've already made the decision of what I want to buy, I become price aware. I become a price conscious shopper on those things, but it doesn't affect my decision. See what I mean? So, like going on these trips with my kids, like there are cheaper things to do with
Yeah.
my children that'll accomplish maybe 75 to 90% of what I'm trying to do. Yet I'm opting into a more expensive vacation. But by the way, is it more expensive than summer camp?
Probably not.
You know,
I can't
again,
believe how much summer camp costs.
this
Whoa.
time, this time
Yeah.
that I'm taking, you know, I'm not just looking at it like, oh, it's a lot of money. It's like, yeah, but I'm not paying for summer camp for 2 weeks for my one child. And so, oh, okay, now I'm only adding this much. Not only that, I'm not going to be at home grocery shopping. I mean, some groceries will have to be bought, but not by me.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like that's that. So I make those trade-offs, but I am a value buyer. I like, you know, but I'm not like, yeah, I can't go because it costs $20.
Right.
I will be more honest. I said, I can't go because that sounds boring.
That goes back to the radical honesty.
Yeah,
in episode 1.
No, money is not the issue.
Yeah.
Money's not the issue. The fact that I don't want to do something,
well,
you know, that becomes not an object of my decision making as much.
You're one of the few people to actually say that, honestly. Which is a nice thing, and I really appreciate that about you. Joanna, before I ask you the last question, where can people find you on social media?
So social media, I think I also said this last episode. You can find me on Twitter, mostly because I check it regularly, but not frequently enough for it to be like, you know, too much. So Twitter at Joanna Zarach is the best place to just ask me questions, connect, look at my old videos.
Yes.
Same YouTube. If you want to just get to the videos right away, my YouTube channel, which is just an upload of my old lives. You know, you can search by topic if there's a topic you particularly want to know. But the best way to get a hold of me is on Twitter.
Now, I want to make a point and say that those YouTube videos are around finance, taxation. So a lot of things that we talked about, you go into a lot more depth, and there is a wealth of knowledge there. So people really, if you have the opportunity to check it out, definitely check it out.
Yeah.
And lastly, I want to ask you, what does it mean to you to live fiercely?
To live fiercely is to lean into the discomfort of the future and to, you know, take your ideas that come to your head and make them into reality. That really is what it is for me. And then be willing to experiment. Take the path less traveled.
I love it.
Yeah.
Joanna, thank you so much. It's so important to have these conversations around finance. I think it's something that we, as a community, as everybody, just needs to talk about more so we can all be educated about it. And again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Bye.